dated August 10th, 2023. We're going to convene our meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, from a roll call standpoint, obviously Bletcher, Bringard, Kelsey, and myself are here. Mr. Corneffel is excused. He is out of town. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda as presented?
Accept the agenda.
Moved by Bringard. Is there support? Support by Bletcher. Questions or comments? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Obviously, that approves our agenda. Approval of the minutes. We have meeting minutes from June of 2023.
Kevin, let me ask you, go down to the public comment where it just has Tim Lorraine's name. Did he not make a comment or something?
I wasn't sure what to put. I just went off the last one I did. I just put their names. He didn't comment. I don't remember exactly what he said.
All right, so from a detail standpoint, we're just referencing the fact that Tim took the opportunity and provided public comment, but no specifics as to what that public comment was. Is there any concerns from the commission as it relates to that? If not, are there any other comments with regards to the June 2023 minutes?
Move we accept.
I have support.
Moved by Bringard, supported by Kelsey to approve the June 2023 meeting minutes. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Expenses. Chief.
In review of the expenses, as the public knows, the fire department works within its dedicated millages. We obtain no funds from any other source from the township. All the expenses are within the budgeted amounts. Nothing is unusual. Everything is in conformity.
All right, so we have two that are on the agenda, approval expenses for June of 2023 and July, so we'll need separate motions for each.
Move to accept the expense report for June 23.
Moved by
Second.
Kelsey, supported by Bringard. Questions, comments? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Next one, July of 2023. We need a motion for that month as well.
Move.
Moved
Support.
by Bringard, supported by Kelsey. Questions or comments regarding the expense report for July of 2023? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Action items. Chief.
Action item, we have recommendation to award the bid for repainting the public safety roof and gutters. These bids, or the request for bids, were published. We received two bids. One bid from Scheffler Painting of Trenton, Michigan, and another bid from Advanced Construction Group from Ohio. The two bids, because of a price increase, we have a bid from Scheffler Painting, $76,500 plus $35,900, totaling $112,000. That is for painting the roof. We dictated the product that we wanted to use. It was a Sherwin-Williams Sure-Coil product, a high-quality product. The building was built in 1999. The paint on the roof at that time had a 15-year lifespan. The necessity is there is rust on the metal roof. There is a metal roof. And we also have parts of the roof that actually the metal is completely exposed. The paint has removed. So that's the purpose, the reason for this job. The other bid was from Advanced Construction. Their bids roughly equal $170,000. It's my position that we award the bid to Scheffler Painting. The bid proposal was that the job had to be completed by September 24th. They are ready to perform the job, and so I move that we award the bid to Scheffler Painting for DPS painting.
Is there a motion with that regard?
Let me ask you this, John.
Mhm.
That is a great big disparity, and usually what that might mean is the higher bidder like this didn't really want the job.
Well, they are coming from Ohio. I don't know why the disparity. I can tell you this. There's a major crush, as we know, in labor and construction. Construction today is very expensive. I think they're in a market where they can almost dictate what they want, knowing that there's going to be fewer and fewer, less competition. So this is a local company, Scheffler. They just got done painting N.A. Mann's. Okay, so I don't think Mann's does, I think they do their research and who they hire. So to me, I feel comfortable. I've talked to Mr. Scheffler probably 6 times. He's been out to the building no less than 4. And I'm confident that he's going to perform and that the job will be done well. So the disparity, I cannot rationalize why, but, I know he's done his due diligence, Mr. Scheffler.
John, one other question is, do we share this cost with the police and/or their budget?
Actually, this cost does not impact the fire department budget at all. This was money allocated by the board from the COVID relief fund.
Correct.
So there is no financial impact on public safety at all. This covers the entire building, police and fire.
Good to hear.
Okay?
Does this have to be approved by the board?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we're going to make a recommendation to the board.
Okay,
So
all
I
right.
need a motion and I need a support.
I'll move.
I'll support.
Moved by Bringard, supported by Kelsey with regards to awarding the bid for the repainting, public safety building, roof and gutters. Questions, comments? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Item number 2, Chief.
All right, action item number 2, chief's vehicle replacement and fire marshal vehicle replacement. The fire marshal's vehicle is 13 years old. The chief's vehicle is approximately 10 years old. The fire marshal's vehicle is in terrible shape. The chief's vehicle has a rod knock and has no air conditioning. And the cloth seats are torn in both vehicles. Kevin's quarter panel, the fire marshal's quarter panel front and back are rusted. The paint is bubbling. The same with the fire marshal's vehicle. The wheel well, I think, and both vehicles are rusted, and they're just in terrible shape. They should have been replaced 3 years ago, for sure. Again, I note that the chief's vehicle has a rod knock. So I've been in touch. I've stapled to your packets the state bid price for the chief's vehicle, which is $61,990. Again, that's the state bid price. There is a change here. The change is the fire marshal's vehicle is not going to be an Expedition. It's going to be an F-150. There is a savings there of $10,000. So we believe also the F-150 is more apt to a fire marshal's job than an Expedition. The fire marshal has to go out and digs and investigate. He's got to put his shovels and whatever hand tools he uses in the back of a pickup truck rather than an Expedition. Now, we did explore enterprise fleet management. I did have an hour meeting at least with the sales individuals from Enterprise. You can see their price comparison. I asked for the lease and the amortization schedule. I didn't get it. So I don't feel comfortable entering in or recommending a lease that the board is not going to see. So I move that we purchase the Ford Expedition and the F-150 from Gorno Ford. Eddie Williams has been wonderful in helping us put that together. Now, as you can see, these vehicles are not going to arrive soon. They maybe arrive in November. Okay? So that would be your action number 2, and I asked the fire commission to recommend that to the board.
All right, obviously, we need a recommendation to the township board, so the pleasure of the commission, we need a motion and support. Motion and support.
I move.
Support.
Moved by Kelsey, supported by Bringard. Questions or comments with regards to the purchasing of the chief and fire marshal vehicles? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried. Chief, item number 3, recommendation on fire marshal.
Okay, I would say regretfully so, Kevin Langley is resigning as fire marshal effective 8/18/23. I did forward his letter of resignation to all the board members and the commission. Kevin is moving on to Traverse County, right, Kevin? And he's taking a position up there with their, I believe, regional investigation team, fire investigation team. And Kevin has done a wonderful job at the Groesville Fire Department. He, at the fire department, has been basically my right-hand person, okay? He takes care of all the equipment. He takes care of a lot of the, let's say, data, information from the fire department. Of course, he does his investigations for the fire department, and he does his fire inspections. He has performed remarkably. We will definitely miss him, and I just would like to say the fire marshal's position is invaluable to the fire department and to public safety. And I tried to keep him here any way I could, but he has a very, very, let's say, beneficial offer from Traverse that will benefit him and his family. So, too bad for us and good for Traverse City.
We're going to miss him.
We're going to definitely
Agreed.
miss him.
Who's
And
going to handle now in the interim?
yeah, well, in terms of the interim, I did have a meeting today with Liaison Bletcher, who was very helpful in, discussing the matter with me. I think Liaison Bletcher and myself, I won't speak for Carl. Let Carl speak on the matter, and because I don't want to, but I think our discussion today, and we met for over an hour, I was satisfied. I was satisfied with what Trustee Bletcher believes is the best step for the fire department. So, but I don't want to talk to Carl, but I'm satisfied. Carl did take the time out today and meet with me, and we had a good discussion on it.
Chief, in the standpoint of Jerry's question, from your perspective, what's necessary to move forward with Kevin's departure?
Well, there's no doubt the fire marshal is on station 8 to 4 and longer. There's no doubt he is invaluable because since he makes medical calls, the tone goes out. Kevin is a licensed EMT, and he arrives on scene. Him and Bravo 1 leave the department within a minute of the call, 8 to 4. So that's extremely valuable to the public that we have a fire marshal 8 to 4 at the station with myself, and we make medical calls. Not only is it important that he's making those calls, it's vitally important, of course, because we have a volunteer department, and sometimes during the day, calls can get lean. He's an excellent parachute, if I could say, to make sure these calls are covered. So I advocate, Mr. Bletcher, Trustee Bletcher heard me out. He wasn't opposing that, to have somebody at the station 8 to 4 in that position. Now, I don't want to put words in Trustee Bletcher's mouth, but I think it's extremely important that that individual be there ready to make those calls when they come off 8 to 4. If I can say it long-winded.
No, understood. Carl, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, there's a learning curve here. The township board historically has been rather hands-off with fire, and with police there is an interest to see what can be done to streamline some of the operations. That's not coming necessarily from me, but I've got a learning curve to learn what the various members of the department do. I spoke with Kevin, and we're going to sit down, and on Monday he's going to walk me through and show me what's there. Coming from the outside, the learning curve is rather steep here, but I've had the pleasure of getting to know Kevin. I sat down with other firefighters and asked them what the job description is for the fire marshal, and they said, well, we have what's on paper, and here's the reality. Because Kevin is the one who's been checking the vehicles, been doing the data reports. He comes in with every incident report, reviews it that day or the next day. It appears to me that that position, as it's presently being used, he is the glue that holds the department together so that everybody is able to operate. All the reports are done properly. Statistics are driven. They're encoded. They're put into the computer. We have reports that go to the state. It's not just a simple job of sitting there 8 to 4 waiting for something to happen. He's been very, very active, and I don't pretend to know Kevin very well, but I already know we're going to miss him because he has done a terrific job. And the things that the firefighters have told me, I sat down with a firefighter, it gave me a page and a half of descriptions as to what Kevin actually does versus what his job description is. I've been through the job description as to what the state requires, the state statutes, and I can tell you Kevin goes way beyond what the state requires. It's not a mandatory position by statute, but you're not going to be able to do an awful lot without somebody like Kevin coming in there and trying to replace him. As John said today, good luck, because you've got somebody that's got the EMT, he's got the computer background, I think you said for 15 years, John.
Yeah, you're not going to replace Kevin Langley.
And I think you're a Diesel 3, if I recall, Kevin, mechanic. And you're able to do things that I think it's fair to say we're going to have a hard time replacing you with 2 people. And the work that you do that's been described to me, I will tell you, I sat down over at Jake's house the other day, and an hour and a half. And Jake went through stuff, and I said, what does Kevin do? And he said, I got a page and a half of stuff here. Let me start talking to you about it. And it's eye-popping. It is just absolutely eye-popping. And I thank you, Jake, for taking the time. I've scratched the surface. But this is something that I believe education is going to be a big part of what we're going to do going forward with Kevin's position and how we're going to be able to fill it. It might take more than just one person. You may have to spread some duties around. I don't know. But I'm prepared to sit with Kevin, walk with Kevin, run with Kevin from what it sounds like, and try and learn that position, and then take that to the board and educate them as to what we need. Yeah. So, and thanks to Kevin, I appreciate the time that he's going to be spending with me.
Yeah, no,
So-
go ahead.
I'm
George.
sorry,
No,
Kurt.
go ahead, you're up.
So are you going to recommend to the board that we fill that position?
I want to talk to Kevin and try and figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to be able to do that. Jerry, candidly, I just am scratching the surface on this. I was stunned when I heard that Kevin was going to be taking his talents and skills and abilities up to Traverse, and that's one of the reasons I want to sit down with him. I'm not going to prejudge. John and I talked for better part of an hour today going over that, and it's going to be some pretty big shoes to fill. I don't know how we're going to be able to do that. If lightning strikes, it's like getting that lottery ticket at Publix down in Florida. Somebody's out there, but are we going to be able to fill it with just one person? I don't know how you're going to be able to make all of that stuff happen. You're probably going to have to reassign, but that's why I want to sit with Kevin and talk with John again.
Yeah, I don't know how you replace, I don't know how you fill everything he did with one person, you know, especially the diesel mechanic licenses he has. Those are advanced licenses. We were lucky to get Kevin because, you know, he came from the city of Trenton motor pool. Yeah, so he had been working on everything from garbage trucks to buses to squad cars to any kind of municipal vehicle. So he joined the fire department. He was working over there, and the position of fire marshal opened up, and he took the position. That's extremely rare. So he came to us very valuable, and I don't know if we're gonna, like you say, Carl, I don't know if we're not gonna get another person that has his invaluable skills. Again, at night, we'd go on calls, something would, there'd be a mechanical problem. I'd come in the morning, whether I was chief or not, and he'd have it done, saving the township thousands of dollars. So now this, we're on the island, and now does this stuff have to go off the island to get it repaired? So it becomes you have to be very careful about the logistical problems of having some of your ambulances off the island.
So you've got basically a week to try and figure out what to do and get to the board if you need some kind of an approval. Is that right?
That's probably,
It's quick.
that's
It's quick.
probably a very narrow time frame, but
Well, and that's the whole thing, is that it is learning curve, right? So when I was treasurer, I think I was supervisor, I think I recommended to Duncan, why don't we just morph the fire marshal and the chief together? And he's like, you know what, that won't work. Why don't you spend a day or 2 days with my fire marshal? So I sat and ran with the fire marshal, and I realized that they are separate, distinct jobs, right? More importantly, Kevin was always there, that fire marshal position 8 to 4, but I also want to make sure that that fire marshal, whoever it is on our department, and it will be able to do night calls as well, right? Because that plays a role in it. So I'm sure Kevin made calls during the day, but I'm sure he made calls during the night, and I'm sure he made calls in the middle of the night or in the middle of the morning. There's a learning curve that we have to make sure that the residents aren't affected by this, and I'm not one that looks back retrospectively, but I think we should have worked harder on trying to retain because what everybody's saying right now is that he was the golden child as it relates to that position. We should have probably worked harder. And Kevin, if we didn't, from my standpoint, from my position, I apologize that there wasn't a bigger, harder fight to retain you, because they're going to be better off with you, and we're going to be worse off without you. So I think we have to move quickly. I think it's important for the chief to have a fire marshal for a whole host of reasons. If there's an event on the island that needs a fire marshal, I'd rather it be our person versus having to call someone in through mutual aid to be a fire marshal. So John, I think it's post haste, however we can do this to get it done right away. And Carl, I think if it's you and the commission and the chief, so that we can educate the board, so it's not just a unilateral thought that we don't really need this position right now. We need it like as soon as he leaves. We need it, and he could be training someone right now as well, because his knowledge, obviously, he's got great knowledge. So let's tap into it before he departs.
One thing I can say that Kevin and I worked out in an effort to train that helps the time is Kevin is taking this job up in Traverse City, but he's coming home every weekend until he can move his family up there. Kevin is going to stay on the fire department and make calls on the weekend, and it gives us another 2 days. He's willing to do this and train a fire marshal or another individual. So I appreciate that. I think it's even more important that he's willing to do that, since, he's leaving in a week. It will give Carl more time, the commission more time, the chief more time for a trained individual to get some experience, because that person's going to have to realize Kevin's willing to do it on the weekends.
And when John and I were talking this morning, he made it very clear that Kevin has decided that he's going to be active for a period, I think you said, of up to 3 months.
Yeah.
So it's not like Kevin's crossing that bridge looking in the rear view mirror for the last time. However, I do respect that he has invaluable time. When you had 5 calls last Saturday, that is an awful lot for one day to respond to. And when you have people like Kevin here that are able to go out and respond and then provide the backup services, the key to me is how are we going to replace some of that? It's not going to be necessarily with one person. I'm not going to find a person that can come in and do all aspects of his job. John's not going to find that. I don't know that we're going to find somebody that can absolutely go in there day one and start running. But I do think once we define the parameters, I can then talk to board members and say, here's the concerns, here's the work that he's doing. we've got to find a way to replace some of this. Some of this is very, very difficult. To find a master mechanic, diesel, is not going to be an easy thing to do. You may have various parts of his job that we're going to have to find either an outsider that can do that, that is a mechanic that can work on things and turn them around. Maybe we've got somebody locally, but there's an awful lot of aspects to his job that are rather unique that he's created. You can look at a position and the job description for a township supervisor. Kurt, you've been there, you've been treasurer. You look at it and say the job description on the outside, you can look at the statute, seems pretty straightforward. But I know that you were in here many hours before the crack of dawn doing your work and then coming in later at night and doing your work, and the job is as big as you make it. We're fortunate to have somebody here that has made this job as big as it is and has the talents and skills. How are we going to be able to replace him? I don't know that we can replace him. What I do know is we have to find people either on the outside or on the inside, and that's why I'm happy to be working with John, that can step up and take aspects of his job that maybe aren't going to be available for somebody else to be able to do that has that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I mean, with the police, I mean, you know full well, Carl, that Detective Bo or Lieutenant Bo, I mean, you know, he was an IT guy.
Yep.
But he really wasn't, I mean, he was our detective, but he was so good at it, we gave him that role, so he did so much of it in-house that we didn't have to pay someone out-house to do it. Obviously, in a volunteer department, I'm sure there's other people under the chief's command that has different roles that they play, and he knows how he can tap into those special roles. So I think, Chief, on the action items, we have something that says recommendation on fire marshal. Is there a recommendation for tonight, or is it more just informing us of where we're at and then the next step?
I think the most important thing is when Kevin leaves, we have somebody at the fire marshal's desk to respond to calls. And I think Carl and I talked about that today. Now, that individual is not designated, you know, the next fire marshal. But it's an individual that will be performing some of the duties that the fire marshal performed, you know, the data entry material. That person might not have the licenses to do the commercial inspections, but that individual is going to be doing a portion of what the fire marshal did, because what the fire marshal did was input, you know, data a lot of times into AccuMed or our I am responding, the remedial kind of stuff that a trained, you know, person could do.
What compensation?
But that person should be an EMT firefighter so that they could make calls, you know, in there.
So, and Jerry just asked a question, compensated?
Oh yeah, they have to be compensated. I expect them to be there 8 hours a day doing, performing the job.
So the recommendation is that upon Kevin's departure, we need someone to fill that position as fire marshal. And again, salary would be based upon what the going salary would be as a fire marshal on Grosse Ile. And the roles would be defined by you, the commission, short term.
Well, I don't know if the individual who's there has to be paid what the fire marshal's doing, because, you know, Kevin has a lot of licensures that.
No, but you would figure out whatever that salary
Yeah,
would be,
yeah,
depending
okay.
upon who you place in that position.
That's right, that's right.
And depending what he brings to the table.
He or she.
He or she brings to the table.
table.
Correct.
So, I mean, commiserate, I mean, it'd be based upon coming back to the board and setting, or, you know, working with township management to figure out what that, but it would be a paid position, wouldn't be a volunteer position.
I agree.
And in our conversations today, we're having this discussion with Derek Thiel, the township manager, and Derek is very much aware of what's going on. He also has 6 positions that he's working on replacing right now, Kevin being one of them, and certainly, in my mind, the most important. But there is the idea that you're going to have somebody there and they have a whole lot of things to do, and we're not just going to go in with a meat cleaver and say that we don't need to have the fire marshal do A, B, or C without having that slack picked up someplace else. I go back, Kurt, you said about the police department. I remember many, many years ago, 35 years ago, when we brought in Ruth Kalidas as a part-time administrative secretary. And you wonder how Maury Stevens and Pat Lyons before him were able to do the work of a chief, because they were doing so much of the administrative. They were doing, and by administrative, I mean paperwork. And you're looking at the stuff that they did, something as simple as responding to a correspondence when we used to use, paper and envelopes. But then in a period of about 2-3 years, you looked at it and said, we don't have the ability for her to stay here part-time. We need to have somebody come in that can work full-time. And she picked up, and that job expanded to where Jessica Hancock now is doing the job, and Chief Carmack just turns her loose under his supervision, of course, but he says she's very good to work with, and I could not imagine having that second pair of hands in the work that she does. She's just spectacular. So we do have a little bit of time, but time is of the essence. And if that means that we have to take some of what Kevin has been doing and find a way for somebody to do that, the one marvelous thing, incredible thing that Kevin has done, in addition to all the time that he's donated, is he has created a position that the chief can rely on. And now we have to go ahead and fill that void and be creative in terms of doing that. I'm confident John can do that. You mentioned Lieutenant Bowe when he left. Bob took over a position, IT position, that had been a problem child for the department and also for the township hall for years, because we went with a company that was promising a lot, not delivering as much as they were. And Kurt, I think you know who I'm talking about. And then when we were able to do it in-house, my God, it was like the clouds parted and the sun came down. And then when Bob left, Eric Vasquez stepped up and has been able to do that and save the township an awful lot of money. They're on site, they're reliable, they know what they're doing. I think that's the task that we're going to have to do, come up with you and Chief as well as Derek, and with Kevin's input. I think that's huge.
Right, I agree.
Not going to be done in a day, but it's going to be done.
So Kevin, do you have that motion? All right.
I'll have it done.
We'll work on the motion, but again, I think it's understanding what we need to make a recommendation to the full board. We just need someone to make that motion as we've discussed.
Make it.
Motion,
support it.
motion by Bringard, supported by Kelsey. Questions or comments? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And just for the record, Kevin, and again, I say this, township should have worked harder in keeping you on gross eel, right? So you will be missed.
Yes, you will be.
Discussion items, Chief.
Okay, discussion items. One, I'd like to talk about the radios that the commission and the board approved for the fire department to purchase back in February. 12 new radios. It's been a while, but again, supply chain problems, labor problems. It's been a long 8 months to get them, but the radios should be here. They're at Herkimer's right now, and they should be delivered to the fire department, we're hoping next week. That's a very, very invaluable upgrade to the firefighters. I've mentioned to the board here that firefighters have shown up on scene and not aware of safety issues. Radios will prevent that. Also, for the firefighter, the EMT, being able to deploy medical equipment that they need and radio ahead to the EMTs in the ambulance what they're working with on scene. They can radio, do they have a difficulty breathing patient, or do they have a bleed? Do they need O2? Do they need a BVM? Do they have a cardiac? Do we need the Lucas? So providing that information from the scene to the ambulance arriving is extremely important. It sets the mindset and the skill set that's necessary the second you arrive on scene. And again, they're getting reports from PD on scene. It's just, I don't know how we operated without EMTs having radios. So this is another upgrade to the Department of Public Safety, the fire department specifically. Those radios will be here. If we recall, we ordered 2 radios from Motorola that were $13,000. I sent the radios back. I stopped the check. We went to another vendor and got 12 radios for $29,000. So the 2 radios were purchased before I got there. I came aware of it. I sent them back and stopped the check. So we basically got, 8 more radios for another $18,000. So those radios are coming in. The ambulance, Bravo 2, we have a capital investment plan. Bravo 2 is due to replace last year. That's our number 2 ambulance. The ambulance, we put them out to bid on Mitten, which is the state acquisition site. We got 2 bids. One was for $390,000, and the other one was for $323,000. Well, we reached out to the vendor for the Braun ambulance, which was the $390,000. I met that salesperson on Monday. We had a 2.5-hour meeting, myself and the salesperson. I asked Kevin to come along, even though I knew he was leaving. He joined me, and through the process of elimination and looking at some of the specs in that Braun ambulance, we were able to, let's say, remove some of our specs in the bid. We got rid of a particular bumper. We took the Q siren out. We took the third battery out. We took the Easy Load O2 lift out. We took out the front condenser. We took out the condenser mounting lights. We deleted the suction system. And that reduced the $390,000 bid $17,000. Now, in the $390,000 was a $27,000 Stryker stretcher component. We're going to take the Stryker component out of Bravo 2, the old ambulance, and put it into the new ambulance. That reduced the price another $27,000 at least, getting the bid down to $340,000. So we reduced in that one meeting $50,000 in cost, and by skeletonizing Bravo 2, see what we could take out of it. Let's say, take the valuables, even though they're used parts, we still believe they're in good shape and they'll operate well enough, and put them in the new unit when we get it. So we believe we've saved the township approximately $50,000. He'll redo the bid, and he'll amend that to the township hall. So that was very, very beneficial, productive meeting with the salesperson from Braun. Now, the other bid that I mentioned, 323, you may say, well, that's still, the 323 is still cheaper than 340,000. No, it's not. The $320,000 bid did not include a chassis, which is $60,000, and it did not include the Stryker unit, which was another $23,000. So that $323,000 bid, and it didn't include graphics either. You got to have the big Roseville Fire Department on that ring, right? That would mean that bid is more particularly about $400,000 once you include the chassis and the Stryker unit and the graphics. So you got to do your homework. So that was productive, and I like to report that.
And Chief, just for information for the public, obviously we have a dedicated millage
Yeah.
as it relates to equipment. So these funds are part of the dedicated and have been kind of expensed out so that when we needed to replace this ambulance, funds were available to pay for a new ambulance.
That's exactly right, Kurt. The public on Grozio, they speak at the ballot box. And when they speak, they either approve your millage, they say that's extremely important, or they don't. And the fire department has always received excellent support from the citizens of Grozio. They just approved a millage for the fire department last year they spoke. They said, you know, the fire department is a platinum asset. We don't want it to go to the, let's say, second priority. We want it top priority. And, well, we can thank the public for voting for it, and we can let them know that we at the fire department do our homework. We investigate all these large expenditures. We try to save what we can. And you're right, this money's already been dedicated in the years prior millages. So this fits into our capital improvement plan. So I just want to let you know, we're working on that too. And the only other item I'd like to talk about, it's been extremely important. You know, I mentioned Kevin is ready and willing to help continue the training after he comes back. He's willing to make calls on the weekend. The fire department is extremely busy. Just last weekend, from Friday till Sunday at 6 a.m., we had 15 different 911 calls. I was there at 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. on a call, and I thought someone was joking with me. That was the fourth call that night, and while I was there, we got a fifth. So Kevin coming back and any time he can give us is important. So June, we had 87 separate EMS calls. July, 70 separate EMS calls. These are not calls that, you know, are trivial. These are full calls, ambulance on scene, EMTs on scene. And so I commend the fire department. And so that's the chief's report.
John, I noticed during that 2-month period, there were 3 cardiac arrests.
Yes.
Were you able to save any of them?
You know, I have it as a note here to mention. An individual I know had a cardiac arrest in July. He's a relatively young guy. He's maybe 60. Anybody who knows about cardiac arrest, you have about, depending on who you talk to, a 4 to 7% chance of survival. Right, Jake? Right? Depending on who you listen to. But it's a very small window of survivability. And every minute that goes by without perfusion, your chances of survival dramatically go further and further. Time is death of the heart muscle. The EMTs arrived on scene, removed him from upstairs, were able to get him downstairs, but immediately on scene, place the Lucas, do high quality CPR, and that gentleman was home in a week. And that gentleman survived. My point, I guess, you bring up, Jerry, is the fire department works.
Well, that's the reason I wanted to
The
mention
process
it, so the
works.
public could hear it.
Yes.
That it's both our ability to get on the scene quickly, and it's
Yeah.
this new Lucas.
Yes, yes. Our staff is high quality. They are quick. They are professionals, and the fire department scheme works. When a person has about a 5% chance of survivability, okay, and they're home, that's a rarity even in departments where they have 12 firefighter EMTs stationed there. So this fire department, the work product is there. And I would continue the model as it is with more EMTs and more firefighters. And I don't laugh because this board knows that recruiting is always got to be pedal to the metal. I mean, so I think I have that.
We took care of item 2,
Okay, now,
replacement of bottom panels and overhead doors and hardware.
yeah, okay, so again, another improvement at the DPS building. The overhead doors are, at least the bottom panels, are in terrible shape. They are in contact with the salt and the water more prevalent than the rest of the panels. They're rusted. They just do not look, and they do not function well. I have published the bid for the bottom panels to be replaced and the hardware and the motors for the doors. The bid deadline is 8/11/23. I've already received quotes. I've already talked to contractors, but however, we had to publish that. So I do know what the price is going to be, and hopefully they provide their sealed envelopes with the bids enclosed to the township. So
Keep
we're
us
moving
informed.
forward on that. And those doors will have to be painted too. The whole door. I'll put a bid out for those so that they match the roof, or if you want to say complement the roof color, right? So, all right. The next item I guess I have there is
Membership.
membership. We have a hiring event this Sunday at the fire department between noon and 3. There will be EMT firefighters there giving tours, talking about the typical duty, talking about the camaraderie, the familial environment that we create down there, and hopefully we can get some EMT firefighters who are attracted to the position. Again, the township pays the cost for the education. So if anybody's listening, the township pays the cost for your education, and then of course we've always talked about the benefits after you get on the fire department, which again has changed since I've been chief to be more attractive.
So this open house is really, it's a hiring event. It's really not for families and children.
No.
It's for someone that is potentially wanting to become an EMT.
That's just it. The open house we have with the bouncy and all the hot dogs and all that happens in the first week of October.
Correct.
Yeah,
All right.
that's where the family comes.
Correct. All right.
All right.
How are you notifying people about your open house?
Well, it's on social media, and we have a big 8x12 banner out in front on the lawn in front of the fire department.
Understand
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
You know, not many people drive by the fire department anymore.
No, they don't like. Yeah, they got to go West
They gotta
River.
go, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's the first time we've ever done anything like this, targeting hiring just for EMTs. So it should be something we do every year. Yeah. So it's a new tactic to get members. Since January, we have 3 new members. I haven't seen 3 new members join the fire department in 7 months. I don't think ever. And these are very high quality workers. I'm impressed with their work effort.
We've already took care of number 5.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Number 6. Okay. Well, you know, the fire department's full of A personalities, right? They all want to move up the ladder, right? They all want to show their talent, and so in our SOGs, we never had a let's say a scheme of progression to notify the firefighter EMT what the chief and the chiefs consider to be valuable in their assessment of whether someone's a candidate for officership and moving up. So I put this progression A, B, C, D with bullet points under each one. I presented this to the firefighters. I think I did a quality job because I didn't hear anything from the firefighters about, no, hey, what about adding this or what about removing that? So this is part of our SOGs now. It's a plan of progression. And what it helps is, you know what, individuals to feel that the system is fair, that individuals who are not the chief's friend are the only ones who get promoted. I'm not that kind of a guy. I've worked very hard in my own individual education. Nobody took the test for me. Nobody took the bar for us, right? We did it ourselves, right? And I want them to understand, I don't care if you're my friend. I don't care if you socialize with me. You're not going to get promoted. These are the elements in which I consider important, and I'm sure Chris Davenport and Tim Lorraine, who are chiefs also, they have this. They expressed appreciation, and this is part of our SOGs now. This ladder of progression, and So I think that was important. It's also important for morale. I think the firefighters appreciate it. They know how to move up the ladder now. The last one is the fire marshal resigns. And again, I think we beat that up.
All
Pardon
right.
me, who's he? He's right over there.
Any other thoughts or questions of the chief as it relates to any of the discussion items that were presented tonight? If not, moving on to public comment, it affords anybody the opportunity in the audience to come to the township podium and give us their thoughts. Is there anybody in the public to provide public comment? If not, is there anything else from the commission? If not, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Move to adjourn.
Moved
Second.
by Bletcher, support by Bringard. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Thanks, and have a good night.